Bryan Del Monte is a former deputy director for policy development at the U.S. Defense Department, is now president of the Aviation Agency, and is here to talk more about the vaccine passport and the debate surrounding it. What are you hearing on the ground level with your peers about whether a vaccine passport makes sense for us domestically?
Well, I think first we should understand what's the passport trying to solve, right? We have two problems. The question is, have you been vaccinated? And how do we know if you're telling the truth? So the goal on all this, of course, is to reduce the spread of COVID.
Right.
So the tension is between those who see it as a, kind of a benign health record and others who see it as, essentially references to Nazi Germany, calling it like an Auschwitz, which I don't think it's that. So I think that's a bridge too far. But there are privacy concerns, there are policy concerns, and more importantly, it's not so much about what happens now, but what's going to happen in the future, because I sincerely hope COVID's our last rodeo, but I suspect it's not.
It may not be. So why don't you walk us through some of those privacy and policy concerns? Start with the privacy aspect, because that's one thing that we hear from people who are not in support of this.
Well, the concerns that they have is essentially the dominoes or the watershed argument. Yes, today it's just, whether or not you got a shot, but we're going to build this infrastructure for this, and thus it contains so much more. There's also concerns about all of the data that was collected in getting the shot. What happens with that data? Because it's not just, I got inoculated with this on this date. Like, I got my shot 2 weeks ago. I'm going to get my second one next week. They asked me all kinds of questions about my race, my ethnicity, was I married, Now, as a marketer, I interpreted most of what they were asking me largely to determine demo and psychographic
census kind of information, sure.
Right. So, but the question becomes, well, who's going to get to use this data and where's it going to be shared?
Right.
Right. So, anyway.
And then you talked about policy issues and concerns. What are they?
Well, I think, you had Bill de Blasio before I came on, and basically, New York is very forward-leaning on the passport, right? They're working with IBM and others. But, it's a policy. Travel is a fundamental right. Okay. Now, the government does have the ability to mandate people get vaccinated. If you're interested, there's a case, Jacobson versus Massachusetts, was decided in 1905, I think, which basically said the government can actually force you to get vaccinated. So if they could force you to get vaccinated, they could probably force you to have a vaccine passport. But the question is then, okay, what's that going to mean? Can I not go to the ball game? Okay. Can I not go to the grocery store?
How far does it take
what exactly is going to be the policy implication of this? Because the right of travel is also a constitutionally protected right.
Under whose purview would it all be? I mean, the government, private sector, in terms of who would design them?
Well, I think, let me talk about what I'd like to see and what I think is actually going to happen.
Right,
I think if we're going to do this, I think it's an inherently governmental activity, so the federal government should lead. That said, the federal government's basically said they're not going to, so I suspect it's going to be a kludge between private enterprise and states and entities like a Super Bowl that try to screen people coming in.
Well, we should point out at this point, they're not going to be federally mandated as far as the Biden administration says, but you might very well need them for international travel. Again, early stages in this. We're already hearing from various states, like we heard from New York. We've heard from Florida, I believe, as well, about how they feel in their states. It's yet to see what California decides. Bryan Del Monte, thank you so much. In fact, we'll have you back on because I have a feeling this is just the beginning, the opening salvos in this debate, to be sure.
Yes,
we'd like to have you back. I agree. Again, an aviation industry expert and president of the Aviation Society, Bryan Del Monte. Thank you so much.